Is any forthcoming response one to give voice to an obvious element of absurdity because of something he might have already concluded was immaterial? Yes, it's true. Achromatopsia he does have. How should this be relevant to directions pursuant to the arrival of such patriots grieved by the rupture bleeding sensible alliance convictions, trading these in for a favoring of an abetting of militants who were only days before disempowered by sanctions as existential threats as considered by them then? Mr. Prime Minister, Elijah. Neither of these men ever sighed, but the transformed look on the prophet's face would seem to suggest that here should it be inserted. He continued after nodding toward Moses as though knowingly and with confidentially pledged that prohibiting slack should be loosened on this one occasion. Many throughout history are the men who would lead others. Some as though feeling it as natural endowment passed down to them from who rear them, so with compulsion these do assume the leadership seat, qualifying themselves ahead of the others. There is another group who've ever experientially known the role throughout their lives and thus feel it incumbent on them as a moral responsibility to aspire for no less than headship position. Noble and envious traits then, yes. With time short and resources thinning, you as one in charge who scarcely is impervious to what does unnerve and rattle the senses as men can only be drawn so thin. For such reasons you appoint counselors, do you not? You are taking me down the long road to somewhere, I'm certain. Only to where already. The Prime Minister's response, even and non-dramatic, with a tinge of exasperation setting in atop of his incountenance demeanor, continued he, it is God who does entrust me with my post ahead of electing men and women, and then it is they. And from there we have our policies engrafted out of principles that are conducive to a well-functioning democracy maintaining its national sovereignty idea, unlike, unfortunately, many others during this age of upheaval in all sectors. And when a person challenges the idea that one person cannot possibly wield enough power to subvert an entire system, it is here that we point to this one riding in on the wings of peace in Nasser Abu Matter Hussein. My point in line with your leadership talk is that corruption has slithered in like a roaring lion only on the wings of the dove, and, on the wings of corruption we do see the leaders entrusted on a former day who have sold out unto such egregious consequences. Many have fallen to the allures of the Antichrist. The time to ridicule the prophets who use the term is universally over. Those who you've entrusted remain with you, only while your national glory has, along with the sturdy conditions of these times, won to the point where considerations once unthinkable or unlikely to you should for the good of your cause be deemed receptive to you, most agreeable. Receive these men and service personnel from overseas. These are altruists tried by the fire and have lost a war waged on their own home fronts that were unto the repairing of the breaches, as intended. These do know the full extent of the importance of their alligning with Israel based on the knowledge of prophecies and the extent of their love that they reserve for God-honoring people. These have on this day welcomed the hour to divest all and find quite appealing if not irresistible the idea of being physically on premises to see their conquering king arrive. It is he who does that which in the end you shan't be able to do, and these with knowledge of this still determined to add to your ranks as your borders without them shall altogether with the hearts of your troops melt. So as the king, I believe it was, had said of you that you in fact do come in to ever trouble him, is this what you propose to do to me? I speak words of truth and of the prudence in preparation taking. As stern as in real life, such was his facial aspect from beneath layers of sleeping consciousness that can be taken before your land for which you and others have spilled blood is dissected neither by policy or design your own but by conquest on this, the long-determined consummation of your opponent's own dissolution of their religious import into society. Sure, many have reasoned that because of conquest is she. To borrow from my contemporary Obadiah. The group conspicuous for their adherence in the sons of Esau breaking from her religious fervor who are termed as being unto stubble as is contrarily Jacob unto fire. But, by conquest are they determined to exit from what their architect has ahead of time determined was a date of insolvency, an end term to their religion. It is scarcely you alone with an eschatological view, the term we've only just come to know, or something exclusive to those taught by our Master Yeshua on the land to where he returns on Mount Zion where he ascended upon being pummeled by the barbarians. You will have one wittingly or unwittingly, a defining of the events if not chronology pursuant to the time, this time, directly preceding his return. Again, he returns as conquering king and eternal savior to sit on the throne of David. Moses broke his silence, Mr. Prime Minister, of all of the persons awaiting not a Messiah but the true Messiah, you are the only one privileged and entrusted to hand over the keys to him. In a sense, said Elijah. Yes. It is he who does rule in the order established befitting his eternal Jerusalem that does descend from heaven, so said Ezekiel before Johann of Patmos exile did see the same city. You see the one become the much larger other over which shall wars be fought in the least in the eternal Jerusalem, and you shall be rewarded for leading the many like those men comprising the elect back to the writings of God. The many who believe still greatly, as you know full well, outnumbered by those who don't, and these do perish only to live out their deaths. Plagues traversing on earth who shall be consigned to that place where the fires are not quenched and where the worm does not die. Again, the conquering king in Yeshua does accomplish what you cannot. In his dream state remaining good-humored, despite theological differences of opinion, that's expressions he had kept to himself, when said he, "So what does this have to do with a man afflicted with colorblindness? You shall see yet, Mr. Prime Minister. Only to have him, your aide-de-camp, meet with you where the throng of Jacob's representative sons shall gather. Or better to say, another shall see." Elijah interjected speedily and in earnest as though to prevent opportunity for any expounding on Moses' trailing word, "Choose 20 men to lead them who themselves shall appoint these men to others for training in your manner of warfare. As many as are the elect who you have seen undaunted outside of your windows, so shall be the numbers of those available to you at the time of your greatest requirement. These prepared to pursue victory instead of valor and to mind tasks before accomplishments, and by so doing are these poised then to go forth as those men fit for Gideon's army. These ones, acknowledging that they'd lost much work for with the dissolution of articles of constitution in the countries choosing civil unrest in their streets. They understand that all is scarcely lost and that something greater worth defending emanates from freedom precepts inside of the soul, inside of which is comported what does accompany one onward to God, unlike what, as amenable as such is any item committed to constitutions and paper. All during an age when the Antichrist himself has so arranged to order these as only as liable as the precepts of his confederate order. You've seen the age-old systems revised, have you not? As though overruled by what materializes only from some sort of abducting invisible vortex. The Prime Minister, since the first few words spoken, having by the arms lead the men to leather seats matching the color of the sofa where throughout they remained standing long after he'd settled behind the office desk. Only now stood he to pace about the room, at shoulder's height with them and less encumbered by their visit and receiving them as might he invite anyone into his office space.